Why use sample data? Here are some good reasons to use a sample of data instead of the full set of measurements from the population. All right, so let's talk about the first reason. It says it may be too difficult or expensive to take a census of the population. For example, what if I told you I wanted you to measure the body fat percentage of all the people living in India today? Well, it'd be nearly impossible, right? It wouldn't be technically impossible, but nearly impossible, because how would you find all of them in the first place, right? Some people would be hard to find, of course. They might live in remote areas and they don't want to be bothered. That would be very difficult to just find everyone. And then imagine the expense of trying to measure their body fat. Even if you use the cheapest method available, it'd be very expensive, right? All right, the second scenario here is it might be impossible to gather all of the population data. Sometimes you want to talk about things that are abstractly defined, like, for example, the body fat percentage for all women who have ever lived, right? Well, you can, maybe theoretically measure the body fat percentage for all the women that are currently alive, but how are you going to get the ones that used to live but have died years ago? How would you know their body fat percentage? How would you be able to measure those? You wouldn't be able to do the measurements in that case. So sometimes your population will just simply be inaccessible. All right, and the third scenario is that sometimes the measurement process itself can harm or destroy the thing you're measuring. We have a great example of this on the next page. Let's go over there and take a look at that. So here we have some bottles that might be used to hold carbonated drinks like soda. In order to make sure these bottles are safe, we have to pressurize some of them to the point where they burst, and then we record the bursting strength, and we know how much pressure that bottle can handle so that A, it's safe, and B, it doesn't lose all the liquid we're trying to sell, right? If the bottle bursts and all the soda runs out, no one's going to buy that bottle of soda. So we want to make sure the bottles are useful. Well, you can't test every bottle's bursting strength, right? Because if you did that, if you ran every bottle under intense pressure until it burst, then the bottles would not be usable. So you would never have any bottles to put your soda in. So that won't work, right? So the obvious idea there is that a sample is required. You cannot take these bursting strength measurements on every single bottle that's produced. The second example here is the idea, what if you're producing a drug, for example, to treat a heartworm in puppies, right? If you don't know if the drug is safe and effective and you want to, kind of measure that, you don't want to go out, obviously, and give that drug to every puppy in the world because, of course, if your drug is not safe and effective, then you would be harming, theoretically, every puppy in the world. And of course, another scenario is that, or another issue is that, obviously, how would you get every single puppy in the world to give that drug, right? It would be extremely difficult to gather them up. And then, of course, the expense would be enormous. You'd have to sell your drug for a lot of money. Of course, then again, if the drug actually worked, if it was there to prevent heartworm or something and the drug worked, you'd have no resale value, obviously, because you just gave the drug away for free to all these dogs that you were running your test upon. So the fact of the matter is there are lots of great reasons to use sample data. And that's really the whole point of our course, right? To kind of eventually make inferences about the population from a subset of the population data. If we had to go out and conduct a census all the time, then there really would be no need for most of the techniques we have in this course.